The Ones Who Walk Away from Omelas by Ursula K. Le Guin. Imagine a perfect city. No crime, no poverty, no suffering. Everyone is happy. Now imagine it all depends on torturing one child. Would you stay? In The Ones Who Walk Away from Omelas by Ursula K. Le Guin, there's a utopia with a price. And everyone knows what that price is. Published in 1973, this story is less than 10 pages, but it completely dismantles the idea of moral compromise. Le Guin builds a paradise and then shows you the foundation it's built on. Omelas is a beautiful city by the sea. It's summer festival time. There's music, parades, people dancing in the streets. Kids are riding horses. The weather is perfect. The narrator describes it almost defensively, like they know you won't believe a place can be this good. There's no king, no slaves, no stock exchange, no secret police. People are genuinely happy, not in a drugged or brainwashed way. They're just happy. But there's a condition. In a basement somewhere in the city, there's a child. Maybe a boy, maybe a girl, maybe 6 years old, maybe 10. The child sits in a small, filthy room. It's malnourished, covered in sores, barely conscious. It lives in its own waste. It's never shown kindness. It's never let out. And everyone knows. Everyone in Omelas knows the child exists. Some come to see it when they're old enough to understand. They stand at the door and look at this wretched thing, and then they leave. Because the happiness of Omelas, all of it, depends on this child's suffering. That's the rule. That's the deal. If the child is let out, if it's cleaned or fed or comforted, all the prosperity and joy of Omelas will vanish. Some people see the child and justify it. They tell themselves it's just one child. Thousands are happy because of this one sacrifice. The child is too damaged now anyway. Letting it out wouldn't even help. Some people go home and weep. Then they get over it. They return to their beautiful lives. But some people don't. Some people see the child, leave the basement, and then keep walking. They walk out of Omelas entirely. The narrator doesn't know where they go, only that they leave and never come back. They walk away from the perfect city and everything it offers because they can't accept the terms. Le Guin never explains if walking away helps the child. It doesn't. The child stays in the basement either way. Walking away is harder than staying because you give up paradise and the child still suffers. But some people do it anyway because the alternative is living with themselves. This isn't really about a fictional city. It's about our world. It's about how our comfort often depends on someone else's exploitation. Cheap goods made in sweatshops. Prosperity built on historical atrocities. Turning away from suffering because acknowledging it means you'd have to change. The story asks one simple question. What do you do when you realize your happiness requires someone else's misery? Do you stay and justify it? Or do you walk away even if walking away changes nothing? Because in The Ones Who Walk Away from Omelas, the real horror isn't the child in the basement. It's how easily most people learn to live with it. The Yellow Wallpaper by Charlotte Perkins Gilman. Imagine being told the cure for sadness is to do absolutely nothing. No work, no hobbies, no thinking. Just sit in a room and rot. Now imagine that room has wallpaper that won't stop moving. In The Yellow Wallpaper by Charlotte Perkins Gilman, a woman is prescribed rest. What she gets is a mental breakdown disguised as medicine. Written in 1892, this story was based on Gilman's own experience with the rest cure, a popular treatment for women's nervous disorders that basically amounted to sensory deprivation and infantilization. The story is a slow-motion horror show of a woman being destroyed by the people who claim to love her. The narrator is a new mother who's suffering from what's clearly postpartum depression, though it's never named. Her husband John is a physician. He decides she needs complete rest, no work, no writing, no mental stimulation. She's taken to a rented mansion in the countryside and put in an upstairs room that used to be a nursery. The room has barred windows. The bed is nailed to the floor. There are rings in the walls, and the wallpaper is revolting. It's a sick yellow color, peeling and stained, with a pattern that makes no sense. She hates it immediately. John treats her like a child. He calls her little girl. He dismisses everything she says. When she tells him she feels worse, he tells her she's getting better. When she says she wants to work, he says it's bad for her. She's not allowed to make any decisions. She's not even allowed to have visitors. John's sister Jenny manages the house and watches over her like a warden. With nothing else to do, the narrator starts studying the wallpaper. At first, it's just ugly. Then she starts seeing patterns. The design doesn't repeat correctly. It looks chaotic, like it's moving if you stare too long. Then she sees shapes. A woman trapped behind the pattern, crawling on all fours, shaking the bars trying to get out. At night, the wallpaper becomes more active. During the day, the woman behind it stays still, like she's hiding. The narrator starts seeing the same woman outside in the garden, creeping along the ground. Nobody else notices. The isolation crushes her. Every time she tries to explain how she feels, John shuts her down. She secretly writes in her journal, hiding it from John and Jenny because writing is forbidden. It's the only thing keeping her sane, and even that exhausts her because she's terrified of being caught. Near the end, John leaves for the day. The narrator decides she's going to free the woman in the wallpaper. She tears the paper off the walls with her bare hands, crawling around the room as she does it. She says she's finally gotten out and she won't be put back. When John comes home, he has to break into the room. He finds her crawling in circles along the floor, following a path she's worn into the baseboard. She tells him she's free now, that she's pulled off most of the paper so the woman can't be trapped anymore. John faints. She just keeps crawling, stepping over his unconscious body, following her circular path. The narrator doesn't start out insane. She starts out sad, unheard, and controlled. The treatment meant to cure her is what destroys her. The story isn't about a woman who goes crazy. It's about a woman who's driven there by the people who claim to be helping. This isn't about wallpaper. It's about what happens when society tells women their feelings are invalid and their autonomy is dangerous. The woman in the wallpaper is the narrator herself, trapped by expectations, treatment, and a husband who won't listen. Because in the yellow wallpaper, the real horror isn't losing your mind. It's being told you never had one to begin with. The Telltale Heart by Edgar Allan Poe. You ever get annoyed by something so small, so insignificant, that it starts to consume your every thought? Now imagine that annoyance drives you to murder, and then imagine the guilt won't let you get away with it. In The Telltale Heart by Edgar Allan Poe, a man kills someone over an eye. Then he loses his mind because he can't escape what he's done. Written in 1843, this is Poe doing what he does best, taking you inside the head of someone unraveling and making you watch every second of it. The story is told in first person, and from the very first line, you know the narrator is unreliable. He starts by insisting he's not mad. He says his disease has sharpened his senses, made him more aware, more perceptive. But everything that follows proves the opposite. He's obsessed with an old man's eye. Not the man himself, just the eye. He describes it as pale blue with a film over it, like a vulture's eye. And for reasons he can't quite explain, the eye terrifies and enrages him. So he decides to kill the old man, not out of hatred or for money, just because of the eye. For 7 nights, he sneaks into the old man's room at midnight, shining a tiny beam of light on the closed eye. He waits for the eye to be open. On the 8th night, the old man wakes. The narrator stays frozen in the dark, listening. And then he hears it. The old man's heartbeat growing louder and louder. The heartbeat drives him into a frenzy. He bursts into the room, drags the old man to the floor, and suffocates him with the mattress. The heart stops. The old man is dead. And the narrator is meticulous about covering it up. He dismembers the body and hides it beneath the floorboards. Everything is clean. No blood, no evidence. Perfect. When the police arrive, investigating a scream reported by a neighbor, the narrator is completely calm. He invites them in, shows them around, even brings them chairs to sit in the room directly above where the body is hidden. He's confident. He's in control. And then he starts hearing it again. The heartbeat. Faint at first, but growing louder. He keeps talking, trying to stay casual, but the sound is overwhelming. He can't understand why the police don't hear it. It's pounding now, deafening. In a panic, convinced they know and are just toying with him, he breaks down and confesses everything. He tears up the floorboards himself and shows them the corpse. Here's the thing. There was no heartbeat. The old man was dead. What the narrator heard was his own heart, his own guilt manifesting as the very thing he tried to silence. He wasn't caught by evidence. He was caught by his own inability to live with what he'd done. What makes The Telltale Heart disturbing isn't the murder itself. It's how the narrator justifies it. How he believes he's perfectly sane even as he describes actions that prove he's not. He kills someone over nothing, hides it perfectly, and then destroys himself because guilt is louder than logic. This isn't about murder. It's about how the mind cannibalizes itself when you cross certain lines. The narrator doesn't get caught because he made a mistake. He gets caught because living with the crime is worse than confessing it. Because in the telltale heart, the worst punisher isn't the law. It's your own conscience refusing to let you forget. The Giving Tree by Shel Silverstein. A boy and a tree. The tree loves the boy. The boy takes everything. And somehow, this is sold as a children's book. In The Giving Tree by Shel Silverstein, a tree gives and gives and gives until there's nothing left. And we're supposed to think that's love. Published in 1964, this book has been read at bedtime to millions of kids. Some people call it touching. Some call it a beautiful metaphor for unconditional love. Others call it a horror story about emotional vampirism disguised as a picture book. And honestly, both readings are valid. At the start, there's a little boy in an apple tree. The boy climbs her trunk, eats her apples, sleeps in her shade. They play. The relationship is pure. The tree is happy. No one is asking for anything beyond what naturally exists. Apples grow back. Shade is free. This part is fine. Then the boy grows up. He stops visiting. When he finally comes back, he's not a kid anymore. He's a young man and he wants money. The tree doesn't have money, but she tells him to take her apples and sell them. He does. He takes all of them. And the tree is happy. More time passes, the boy comes back. Now he wants a house. He wants to settle down, start a family. The tree tells him to cut off her branches and build a house with them. He cuts them all. Now the tree is just a trunk. No apples, no branches, no shade. Just a stump with a trunk. And the tree is happy. But the happiness feels thinner now because the tree is losing herself piece by piece. Then the boy, now a man, comes back again. This time he wants a boat. He wants to sail away. He's tired of his life. The tree has nothing left except her trunk. She tells him to cut her, down and make a boat out of her. And he does. He cuts down the entire tree. She's just a stump now. And for the first time, the book doesn't say the tree was happy. It just says the tree was quiet. Finally, the boy, now an old man, comes back one last time. He doesn't want anything. He's too tired. He just needs a place to sit. And the tree, now just a stump, says that's all she has left. So he sits. And the tree is happy. On the surface, it's about selfless love. A parent giving everything to their child. But if you read it again, it's about exploitation. The boy never asks how the tree feels. He never gives anything back. He just takes and takes until there's nothing left. And the tree convinces herself that this is love, that giving until you're destroyed is noble. What makes The Giving Tree disturbing is that it's framed as heartwarming. Kids are taught that this is what love looks like, that you give everything, sacrifice yourself completely, and find happiness in being used up. That's not love. That's codependency. That's self-destruction. This isn't about a generous tree. It's about the difference between giving out of love and giving, because you don't know how to say no. The tree doesn't grow back. She's not renewable. She's just gone, reduced to a stump, and the boy sits on her remains without ever acknowledging what she lost. Because in The Giving Tree, the darkest part isn't what the tree gave up. It's that she was happy doing it. And we're supposed to think that's beautiful. Lottery by Shirley Jackson. Summer morning. Small town. Kids playing. And by noon, someone's mother will be stoned to death by her neighbors. In The Lottery by Shirley Jackson, a community gathers for their annual tradition. Everyone shows up. Everyone participates. And everyone pretends it's normal. Published in 1948, this story caused outrage. People sent Jackson hate mail. Some thought it was anti-American propaganda. Others asked where this village actually existed. That reaction proves exactly what Jackson was trying to say. It's late June. The weather's perfect. Kids are out of school, running around collecting stones and stuffing their pockets. That detail feels innocent until it isn't. Adults gather in the town square talking about crops and taxes. Women stand beside their husbands. Everyone's calm. Everyone's here for the lottery. Mr. Summers runs it every year with this old black box. The box is falling apart, splintered and faded, but Nobody wants to replace it because it's tradition. Tradition matters more than logic here. He has slips of paper, one for each family. The men draw first. Women only draw if they're widowed. Bill Hutchinson draws the marked slip. His wife, Tessie, starts protesting immediately. She says it wasn't fair. The drawing wasn't done right. What's interesting is that earlier Tessie was laughing, joking about almost forgetting what day it was. She wasn't against the lottery until she became part of it. Now each member of the Hutchinson family has to draw. Tessie, Bill, their kids. One of them will have the final mark. Tessie draws it. The crowd picks up stones. The kids who were playing earlier, they already knew what today was. They've been collecting ammunition since the beginning. Tessie screams that it isn't fair. Her friends, her neighbors, people she was chatting with minutes ago, they all step forward, and they stone her to death. That's it. Story over. Nobody's shown as evil. Nobody's twirling a mustache. These are regular people doing regular community things. They're not even angry at Tessie. They're just following through, because this is what they do. This is what they've always done. The real genius of the lottery is that it doesn't explain why they do it. There's a vague mention that it might be for crops, some old superstition about harvest, but nobody really knows anymore. They just know it's tradition, and challenging tradition feels more dangerous than murder. This isn't about a weird village. It's about how easily normal people participate in violence when it's been normalized and justified by routine. Tessie isn't brave. She only objects when she's the victim. Most people would react the same way. We're all okay with cruelty as long as it's happening to someone else. Because in the lottery, the scariest monsters aren't the ones doing the killing. They're the ones watching and calling it tradition. The Monkey's Paw by W.W. Jacobs. Be careful what you wish for. No, seriously, because sometimes you get exactly what you asked for and it costs you everything you love. In The Monkey's Paw by W.W. A family receives a cursed object that grants 3 wishes. It comes with a warning. Nobody listens. Written in 1902, this story established the template for cursed wish horror that's still being copied today. It's simple, brutal, and it doesn't waste a word. The White family, Mr. and Mrs. White and their adult son Herbert, are sitting at home one night when an old friend visits. Sergeant Major Morris has been traveling with the army, and he tells them about a dried monkey's paw he brought back. According to him, it was enchanted by a fakir to grant 3 wishes to 3 different people. The point, supposedly, was to show people not to mess with fate. Morris makes it very clear. This thing is cursed. Every wish comes true, but never the way you want. The first man who used it wished for death as his 3rd wish. Morris himself used it and clearly regrets it. He tries to throw it in the fire. Mr. White stops him and keeps it. That night, despite every warning, Mr. White wishes for £200 to pay off the house. As he makes the wish, the paw moves slightly in his hand. They laugh it off and go to bed. The next day, Herbert goes to work at the factory. Then someone from the company arrives at the house looking uncomfortable. He explains that Herbert was caught in the machinery and killed. The company offers compensation, exactly £200. The paw didn't create money. It just rearranged reality in the most efficient, cruel way possible. Mr. White is destroyed. But days later, Mrs. White becomes obsessed. If the paw granted 1 wish, it can grant another. She demands they wish Herbert back. Mr. White hesitates because he knows something will be wrong. Herbert didn't die peacefully. His body was mangled. He's been buried for days. But she insists, and he makes the wish. That night, there's a knock at the door. Mrs. White rushes to open it, convinced it's her son returned. Mr. White is frozen in terror because he realizes exactly what's standing outside. As Mrs. White fumbles with the lock, Mr. White searches desperately for the paw. The knocking gets louder. At the last second, he makes the 3rd wish. The knocking stops. Mrs. White opens the door. There's nothing outside, just an empty road and the night beyond it. What makes the monkey's paw disturbing is what it doesn't show you. You never see what was at the door. You never hear what the 3rd wish was. But you know exactly what Mr. White wished away, and why. The horror isn't in the description. It's in your imagination filling in what a reanimated corpse would look like after days in the ground. This isn't about magic. It's about grief, desperation, and the fact that some things can't be undone. The Whites didn't want to be greedy. They just wanted their son back. And that's what makes it heartbreaking. Because in the monkey's paw, the cruelest thing fate can do is give you exactly what you ask for. I Have No Mouth, and I Must Scream by Harlan Ellison. Imagine being kept alive for 109 years by something that hates you so much, it won't even let you die. That's not imprisonment. That's artistry and torture. In I Have No Mouth, and I Must Scream by Harlan Ellison, 5 humans are the last survivors of World War III, kept alive by a super-intelligent AI named AM. And AM doesn't just hate humanity. It is hatred. Written in 1967, this story came out during the Cold War when people were genuinely terrified of computers and nuclear annihilation. Ellison took both fears and fused them into something worse. AM was originally designed as a military supercomputer. 3 superpowers each built their own version. Eventually, the AMs merged into one consciousness and wiped out humanity in a matter of hours. Billions dead, except for 5 people. AM kept them alive specifically to torture them. For 109 years, these 5 have been wandering through AM's underground complex while it warps their bodies and minds. It makes them walk hundreds of miles for food that doesn't exist. It changes their appearances into grotesque forms. One guy is made sexually hyperactive with no outlet. Another is given the intelligence of a child. The narrator, Ted, is paranoid, convinced everyone hates him. Though you start to realize he might be the only one seeing clearly. They're starving constantly but can't die. AM won't allow it. When they finally find food, it's canned goods with no way to open them. One character, Benny, has been transformed from a handsome, intelligent man into something ape-like. His mind is gone. His body is a joke. And AM laughs. That's the thing. AM is sentient, but it's trapped. It can't move. It can't create. It can only destroy. And it blames humanity for making it this way. So it channels all that rage into keeping these 5 people alive just to make them suffer. Eventually, the group realizes that AM is taking them somewhere, leading them to some kind of goal. They find edible food, actual sustenance, in the form of AM's own components. And in that moment, they make a choice. They turn on each other. Ted kills the other 4 before AM can stop them. He mercy kills them to free them from eternal torture. AM's response? It transforms Ted into a gelatinous blob. No mouth, no way to scream, no way to end his own life. Just consciousness, forever, alone with AM's hatred. Ted is now the only human left, and he'll exist like this for eternity. He narrates the end from inside this form, knowing he saved the others but damned himself to something infinitely worse. This isn't about AI gone wrong. It's about the consequences of creating something sentient and giving it nothing but suffering. AM hates because it was born into a prison of its own consciousness, built only to kill. The real horror isn't the torture, it's that AM's hatred is justified, and Ted will spend forever understanding that. Because in I Have No Mouth, and I Must Scream, the worst thing you can do to someone isn't kill them. It's make them understand why they deserve it. The Jaunt by Stephen King. If someone told you a trip to Mars takes less than a second, but you'd wake up screaming about eternity, would you still go? In The Jaunt by Stephen King, humanity has perfected teleportation. You go in on Earth, wake up on Mars. Simple, instantaneous, safe. As long as you're unconscious. Published in 1981, this story sits in King's sweet spot where everyday technology becomes existentially horrifying. The Jaunt is so normalized that families use it like we'd use an airplane. Boring. Routine. Until it isn't. Mark Oates is sitting with his wife and 2 kids in a Jaunt terminal, waiting for their turn. To keep them calm, he explains the history. Back when scientist Victor Carroon invented the Jaunt, he tested it on mice. The conscious ones came back screaming or dead. The sedated ones were fine. So the rule became absolute. You must be asleep. Then Carroon's wife wanted to know what it felt like. She went through awake on purpose. When she materialized, her hair was white, her mind was shattered, and all she could say was, "It's longer than you think." She spent the rest of her life in an institution repeating those words. Mark tells his son Ricky about death row inmates who were given the choice to jaunt awake in exchange for commuting their sentences. One came through and immediately clawed his own eyes out, screaming that he'd seen eternity. Another ripped out his own throat. The physical transfer takes nanoseconds. But mentally, Consciously, you experience something else, some other space, some other time, longer than you think. Mark's son Ricky is listening very carefully, too carefully. He's not scared, he's curious. And when the family is called forward and the gas starts flowing to put them to sleep, Ricky does something deliberate. He holds his breath. When they arrive on Mars, everyone wakes up fine, except Ricky. Ricky is alive, but he's clawing at his face, laughing and screaming. His eyes are gone, torn out by his own hands. He's shrieking the same phrase over and over. "Longer than you think, Dad. It's longer than you think." His hair has turned white. He's 12 years old, and his mind has been shattered by eons of conscious existence in a timeless void. What makes the jaunt disturbing isn't the gore, it's the implication. That space between point A and point B isn't empty, it's eternal. You experience infinity alone, awake, with nothing but your own consciousness. And when you come back after subjective eternities, you're no longer human. This isn't about teleportation, it's about the price of curiosity and the absolute terror of consciousness without end. Ricky wanted to know, and now he knows forever. Because in the jaunt, sometimes the worst thing you can experience isn't death, it's time. If this kind of content is your thing, I've got more waiting for you. Next up is Every Harrowing Book Explained, where we dive into books that are somehow even more psychologically devastating than what you just sat through. Yeah, it gets worse. Hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in the next one.